Hazardous anomaly detected. Quarantine activated.
Okay, then. Well, welcome to Killer Cuts Chapter 3. We were just slightly interrupted there as it's quarantine time because we are talking about Kevin Williamson's latest slasher film. We're talking about Sick. I am Bobby Munson, and right beside me, the natural Astra Pizarro. How are you doing today?
I'm tired, but it was one of those things that I couldn't not talk about this movie after seeing it. So I'm glad I brought it up to you when I did. How are
I'm
you doing?
I'm doing quite well as too. This is one of those movies where I hadn't heard about it, and I had seen it come up on various lists and stuff like that. I didn't look too deeply into it. Kind of read a brief synopsis and thought that might be interesting, but wasn't in a rush. There was still a lot of other things I was kind of filtering through and watching at the time. So I thought, okay, I'll wait a little bit before I watch this one. And then when you brought it up and said this is Kevin Williamson's latest slasher, and I thought, okay, perfect. And we should clarify when we say latest slasher, he did not direct this by any means. This is a Kevin Williamson written film, just like Scream 1 and 2 were. So it's a great tie-in to what we've been doing so far with Killer Cuts. Of course, we had our Scream franchise in Chapter 1. We did our review of Scream 6 in Chapter 2. Now we're bringing you Kevin Williamson's latest. And this one, very, very unique and very, very interesting. I'm glad you recommended this to me. It is a good talk, that's for sure. Anyway, I mean, it really plays in the world that Kevin Williamson likes to play in, a combination of both slasher films and being almost kind of in the metaverse in a sense too, because this one hit home very recently for many of us. Pretty much all of us, I would say. We're talking about pandemic times, quarantine times, all the kinds of things that you have to do, including wearing this thing that I don't even know how to keep on my face anymore. It's been so long. But trying to be a trooper here throughout this thing. I wouldn't want to end up on the bad side of the killer or killers in this one. We will warn you that later on we will get to the spoiler warning portion of this program. So if you haven't checked out Sick, I know over in the US, you can check that out on Peacock. Here in Canada, you can rent it through various services. Aside from that, I don't know if you can find it for free streaming here in Canada just yet. I'm sure eventually it might be, but if you're ambitious like myself, you want to go check it out, pony up the cash and go check out the latest movie that Kevin Williamson wrote. And I should mention, director on this one is a gentleman by the name of John Hyams. I looked at the list of stuff he did, not like a massive director at this point, so really kind of getting his feet wet. He has done a few various films. Well, a lot of his stuff has been more of the straight to streaming, straight to videotape, movies so far. But I really do like what he did with this. I like how he, focused Kevin Williamson's writing in this one. And I like where this went. And I'm going to turn this over to you, kind of get some general thoughts on the movie and just bring us into it, kind of give a little bit of the plot line to the listeners, let them know what Sick is all about.
I think, ironically, thinking about this, like coming into it, knowing what the overall theme of the movie was, I was hesitant to watch it because I was thinking, I don't think they're going to take it in a great direction. That's my thought process. So I was a little hesitant, but I said, it's Kevin Williamson. I watched Scream, I watched Vampire Diaries, so I should trust the guy right now, and I should enjoy his work. I know he also, I think if I'm not mistaken, he was the executive producer as well for the movie. So once I saw Kevin Williamson, I thought, I'm sold for now. Let's see what happens. But going into the movie, all we overall get is the part of officially we're in the quarantine phase, if you call it like that. I don't know where it's set at though. If I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to look at the preview of it. Yeah, but all it says is Parker is just going on a quarantine with her best friend. Her family has this like kind of like beach house that they barely go to. She says her dad usually goes to it to hang out with his friends, but it's not very often. So it's usually empty for their family. And they go quarantine. It's like, oh, it's a lake house. So they quarantine and they're thinking, we'll be here quarantining for whatever amount of time we need. but they think they're alone, but they're actually not. And that's the part that I love the most of like the twists and turns that we get in this movie. It just reminds me a lot of what Kevin really does and what he's great at. And it just one of those movies that you kind of think of like it's gonna end up this being a certain way and it actually doesn't. Um, I felt like it was such a good way to connect like that reality that we had at that moment with a horror as well. And we had to have somebody to hold like we haven't screamed before too. So of course it's the Kevin Williamson movie.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny that this came out because right at the time of the pandemic and of quarantine starting to happen, I thought to myself, how long before somebody goes and makes horror movies based on this
Yeah.
period? I think
Hmm.
it had to happen eventually, and it didn't take long at all. So this thing premiered just late last year at the Toronto International Film Festival, followed up with a release on January 13th. Now available to people. You mentioned the basis of the story, the plot at the cabin there, and everything like that, where they are quarantining. But let's go to the opening scene for a minute here too.
Hmm.
So a guy named
Yeah.
Tyler is going to a shopping mall, and this is kind of where people have their differences of opinion. Some want a mask, some don't. Some are very opinionated about the ones who aren't in this short little scene, including our killer or killers, who then start to contact Tyler, and they seem very upset about the fact that this guy has chosen not to have his mask or chosen not to follow
Mhm.
protocols like he should be, or at least as the rules are stating. We're not going to get into political debates on a show
Mhm.
about horror movies at all. But this was, you could tell this was Kevin Williams style writing. The way this started out, it felt like a Scream movie, but
Mhm.
during the pandemic times, he was back to form for sure. And yeah, I like how this opened. And I do want to mention it because Tyler will come back into play to a degree as well too with
Mhm.
the wrap up of this. We will get to that when we start talking about that final. But uh, the opening scene, great way to start. What are some of the key moments that you really liked, or particular like any of the really tense parts, thriller parts of this one that really stuck home for you?
I think one that definitely does it goes back to Scream as always. It's just the texting aspect that we in Scream we get the phone call. So here he's the person's texting him, and he doesn't know who it is. They're sending him a picture. It's from he's in the line, but it's somebody from the back of the line behind him. So he's trying to look for it to see who he knows, and seeing that aspect of like it's somebody he doesn't know, but that knows him and has his contact number, and has the guts to not only take a picture of him in public, but to send it to him and knowing that he'll react in that second, look for whoever it is. So I think that was really, it just reminded me what Scream is like with their opening scenes. You just, we get that phone call, but instead of having a phone call here, we get a text message instead, or text messages because there's multiple. Um, but yeah, I like that aspect of like that reality of like, I feel like there's more realistic to have texting over a phone call at this time. I feel like most of us end up messaging each other, texting each other more often. So it's just something that felt really realistic to the times as well.
Yeah, it sure did. And you know what? It's funny we bring that up too, because talking about Kevin Williamson's writing style and everything, he has not really had the opportunity to play in that change to technology in terms of the
Mhm.
Scream films. I mean, he did one and two, and the big jump between those ones is, people having color ID suddenly by the time we got to Scream 2. I mean, this was a massive jump. The occasional person on campus had a flip phone at the time of that movie kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like this was where it was just coming and playing. Kevin Williamson has
Mhm.
not had the opportunity to play with the a world of text messaging and social media and all those kinds of things. So it was interesting to see him get this opportunity, and I think that
Mhm.
you're correct. That feeling, it does feel like Scream, but it's done so well. Who knows him? Why are they taking pictures of
Mhm.
him? Why are they messaging him like this? It
Mhm.
just all seems very extremely odd, and it would come full circle. We will get to that very, very shortly there, but I think it stands out very, very well. I do also want to mention the main actress, the character Parker, is actually played by actress by the name of Gideon Alden. Seems very new to the scene. Has done a few movies, but interestingly enough, her mom, Pamela Alden, who has had very, very successful career in both film and television and stuff like that. I did not actually realize that this was her daughter getting her start into film. And
Mhm.
we know from the past, where do most famous actors and actresses get their starts? Well, they get them started off in horror movies, slasher
Yeah.
films, and stuff. So we could just be seeing the very, very start of her her rise. I think she does a good job like anybody else in this film. I like the people in this one. I think that they do a nice job, especially for being a movie that doesn't have a whole lot of people. We're talking about
Yeah.
a time of pandemics and quarantines. This one's held together by very minimal amount of
Mhm.
cast. What were your thoughts on the cast and just being able to play with a very minimal amount of them?
This one more than anything, I really love her as Parker and the way she portrays her, and I feel like I don't want to say change, but like the process that she has to go through in this experience of like if you think about the movie being her life at this time. The only person that I knew beforehand was Tyler because I think he was in the kissing booth if I'm not mistaken. So that's why I know he kissing booth from Netflix. So that's the only person that I knew beforehand. And like you said, it just like it reminded me a lot of Last House on the Left as well.
Mm-hmm.
Was that that one? I believe, if I'm not mistaken,
Or
because they have very minimal cast in that movie as well. So it just gave me the vibe of that one too. But yeah, this one I feel like even with the small cast, it works so well with what was happening in the story itself. It didn't need a lot more people than that. Like the most people I think that we saw in like particular scene was the grocery store at the beginning of the opening scene. That's the most people that I saw through this whole movie.
yeah, and it kind of little plays a bit on the fear of isolation. Kind of gets under the skin more than it does go for jump scares or any of that kind of stuff. So it really plays that out well. It does leave you guessing. You kind of wonder the whole time who could be behind this. What are their motives? What are their intentions? You don't have to scratch your head for too long. It's only about a 90-minute movie, so you will get to the full circle part here. I will say we're going to give you about a minute warning here to come up to spoilers. We will start talking about the end scene here very soon, but this movie did get very, very well received critically. This one scored an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 59 critics scores, a 62 out of 100 on Metacritic. The consensus generally being that this is a great, true to form Kevin Williamson style slasher film, well written, well put together. Again, like Scream, your most well-known person happens to be in that opening scene, and then from there they're building up new people, up and comers in the industry and stuff like that. So I think that this is a great chance. I honestly wish the only thing is that it had more publicity or more people were aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
The advertising that this is from the writer of the original Scream movies, especially with how hot the Scream franchise is right now. I think they really could have done a great job of selling this to the masses. And I hope in doing this show that we'll get to do that and more people will watch it for sure. Before we go to the spoilers, though, general thoughts, like where would you rank this? This is a rewatchable movie for you, a one-time watch. Is this something that maybe we could see a continuation of? And we'll hold off on the continuation because we'll talk about that with the ending here.
Yeah.
So
No, definitely I think it's rewatchable. It's just the part that like once you know the twist is obviously not fun anymore. It's not like Scream, like I could watch it so many times and I still feel like that, that same feeling. I don't get the same with this one, but it's still something that when you want to, you can rewatch at any time. And like I said, it's like having the part of like it's so real to you compared to like Scream. If Scream doesn't feel like something that will happen to any of us anytime soon, versus this one was more like close to home in that aspect. So, yeah, this one I've already seen it twice, and either way, I just like there's some parts of like I don't want to say jump scares, but there's some parts are just like, wait, is it now? And I hadn't seen it in a while. I remember watching it maybe the first couple of days after it came out. So I love that I was able to watch it now, and I felt like I was watching it for the first time, even though I knew what the twist was. That was the only thing that I knew beforehand. But yeah, overall, I love the pacing of the movie as well. I feel like it was very well done. And it's like after I finished, I was like, that was not bad. It was better than They Slash Them. That was a waste of time for me.
see, and that one I haven't seen, so I can't compare. But
Well, there you go.
but this one I did enjoy. It's definitely rewatchable. It's the kind of slasher flick that I can get behind and I support 100%. I really like when I see well done, well put together films like this. I know that these aren't Academy films. They're not like going for being the best, most interesting horror movie of the year. They're a slasher film. If you like slasher films, you already get it. You already know you're going to go into this and you're probably going to enjoy it. We hope you're going to enjoy it anyway. But you've had fair warning now. It's time for spoiler talk, and that's what's coming up now. Here we are. It's time to talk about how this thing wraps up. So now, essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, we do technically have 3 people behind the killings, more
Yeah,
or
that's one thing
less.
that I didn't think about the first time watching it. Rewatching it now made me think of it. I was like, wait, there was one. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It took me a little bit to realize it was 3 people as well, but technically we just had 2 that were masked and 1 that wasn't. So I was like, maybe that's why we kind of don't think about it at first. But yeah, we had 3 killers on this one.
Yeah, so it is technically 3 because this is a family of 3. We find out
Mhm,
that the main 2, I guess the masked 2, would be
mhm,
husband and wife Jason and Pamela, and then they do have a son as well too that ends up getting the first of the 3 that gets knocked off in this process.
mhm,
And their whole motive is very, very interesting. Like the surprise motive to this, I see what you mean by not having the surprise it would ever again, like a
mhm,
Scream movie where you can get behind it. This was okay, that's unique, but it would be hard to follow
mhm,
it up and continue the series in the same vein. So what this is essentially they are the parents of a younger guy by the name of Benji. Their younger son Benji
mhm,
was seen in a video on Instagram making out with Parker. Parker was asymptomatic, ended
mhm,
up passing on pandemic to to
mhm,
their son, who unfortunately passed away from complications of it. It's also found out that Tyler, the guy from the beginning, possibly is the one or was the one that had passed it along to Parker. So that's where this whole trail and reasoning comes. There isn't really any innocent bystanders like there can be in Scream. There
mhm,
isn't anything other than trying to go after people in a revenge plot. This is a 100% revenge plot. It
mhm,
not only hits hard because it's so recent, but it can be so real. And I think that's what's
mhm,
gonna, it might put a lot of people off. And I think that might be the trouble for some people with this being so
mhm,
recent still, the difficulty of trying to sit down and watch that and absorb what it would do to somebody to lose somebody and feel like another
mhm,
person was responsible for that loss. Could it really push them off the edge to go to this kind of length? And it's not outside the realm of possibility. They like
mhm.
this one for me a little bit more realistic than a Scream movie.
Yeah, for sure. They are. I definitely felt the same way too. Once they revealed that motive and they showed us back, it just to me it didn't seem anything that wouldn't happen in real life if it were to happen to somebody else. And that's what I thought. This one was definitely different from Scream in that aspect for me too. Just that reality aspect, that possibility that it could be anybody. It was different in that aspect of it.
Yeah, and it's so unique and so interesting. These two have a great plot, but then you start to do the thinking, and this is where I got to thinking that like, what can we do? Because Kevin Williamson, he started a franchise in
Mhm,
terms of Scream, did a great job of getting that one off the ground. I started looking at this one. Is this something that could end up being a franchise? Do people want it to be a franchise? Like I know Kevin Williamson's now technically responsible for a few different slasher series. At this point, we got not only Scream, but I Know What You Did Last Summer is another creation of his.
mhm,
Although being the I Know What You Did Last Summer based on a book, but anyone who's read the book to I Know What You Did Last Summer will know 100% that Kevin Williamson used the name and nothing else pretty much from the entire thing, because there's not a whole lot of comparisons to be made between those other than the name. Um, but yeah, it's interesting to think, can this continue? And if it continues, how do you go about it? Because you can't have people continuing revenge plots. You could do different stories within the same
mhm,
time frame and stuff like that. The only way I could look at it is somebody who observed or heard about this news or something like that became obsessive with it. They
mhm,
started to read about it, follow it, they checked it out, they've made their clippings, and suddenly they think maybe this is what I need to do to
mhm,
seek revenge for something that happened to me. And it doesn't have to be because of pandemic purposes. The series could continue on for other reasons as well too. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. I mean, they could play in a lot of different things that could be passed on to
mhm,
somebody if they want to go down the route of being sick or
mhm,
ill. They could also just make the next part called something else and be in the same kind of the same universe as this, but
mhm,
somebody who's copycatting the killings and going in a different way. How would you approach this if you were to look at this from a sequel
Mm.
perspective? How do you think the best way to go about it would be?
I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, I keep thinking like I would feel if they did something like that, it will fall a little bit too close to like what Scream is in that aspect, because we have always like somebody kind of learning from the first one or learning from the person that did it beforehand, kind of remaking it in their own way, and then it keeps going like that. And it just like I think this, if you want to make it, you have to make it something. Even though it's Kevin Williamson, of course, still want to make it separate from what Scream is. So it'll be, I would say, not difficult, but like maybe a little bit complicated and challenging to make it unique from Scream. And that aspect is for like, if you want to make it, you cannot follow like the same template from Scream. So it'll have to be something he hasn't done before, which I don't know how he would do that. But still, was like I think your perspective is a really like that one that would be cool to see something like that. But like I said, it would remind me too much of Scream. So I was like, I don't know if it'll be interesting enough as as a sick film, let's put it like that. Um, but yeah, I just kept thinking it'll be probably like the same type of plot. Maybe if it's happening to somebody else, but it'll be like the same, like you're watching the same movie, just different people.
Mhm.
So that's the only thing that I could think of.
Now, the only other thing I could think of, and I'm not going to go down this road too deep, but what if this was not just an isolated these three sort of thing?
Mhm.
They were brought in to a bigger group that was seeking revenge for all sorts of things, and that maybe
Mhm.
the bigger group in the next time is seeking out those who choose not to go for their shot. I mean, it's a thought on it. I'm not saying anything, but I mean, maybe that would be their target is people who they
Mhm.
disagree with that are making that stance would become the
Mhm.
target of several killers. Even like, I mean, we've never really seen a mass group of killers. Three seems to be the pushed limit so far when it comes to
Mhm.
slasher films anyway, if you don't count something like Last House on the Left, which features four people. But I could only imagine a mass murders being done by a
Mhm.
group of people could maybe be a different direction for them.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, here's something I want to try this because I did bring up Kevin Williamson's past Scream. I know what you did last summer and this one as a writer. Of the three, I think I know which one you would say is your favorite. I think it's pretty. But I'm curious to know after Scream, between this one and I know what you did last summer, what your feelings would be. Which one is more rewatchable for you?
For me, I mean, always Scream will always be the most rewatchable out of the three for me. But I think I know what you did last summer was definitely like the second one for me, because I realized when the show came out recently, the reboot, I hadn't seen the movie in quite a while. So now that I rewatched it, I feel like I was watching it like new, and I feel like I've forgotten so many details that happened. Not only with that one, but the sequel as well. So it just made me think of like I feel like I don't remember any of this, which is with Scream. I feel like I remember a lot of things even after watching it the first time around. So I thought that was super interesting going into the movie. So I definitely like Scream is always gonna be my number one no matter what. Sorry.
Well, no need to apologize. It's my number one of the three as well too. Um, you know, it's tough with the other two because I know what you did last summer still has that nostalgia. I was in high school. I was going to these movies in theaters and experiencing them for the first time. I know what you did last summer. I remember watching I think it was like a summer afternoon or something like that. There was like nobody in the theater and everything, and just sitting back, kicking and watching this movie for the first time. And I've seen I know what you did last summer a lot. And of the three, this is the only one I haven't seen as much, obviously due to it not being out for very long, and something I only just recently watched for the first time. But I could make an argument for this one. I'm curious to know if it'll still have the same effect after I've seen it a few times with the ending and stuff like that. I love the ending. Don't get me wrong. I'm not
Mhm.
slandering the ending or anything. I'm just curious to know how the longevity of the rewatches will be with this one.
Mhm.
So I think again, if I was to rank Scream by a country mile as number one, I know what you did last summer and then this one, but I'd say it's tight with the other two because I liked this one quite a lot. It was very inventive, very different, very interesting in 2023 that we could have a slightly original idea behind a slasher flick.
Yeah, because that's one thing I kept thinking, like you said earlier, just like once the pandemic started, I was wondering how terrible the slasher horror films were gonna be about it, and I feel like this one made me think differently about it.
Yeah, and I mean slashers they can be not everybody's cup of tea. So it's
Mhm.
nice when we got ones like this that are definitely strong, and we could say not only from a point of view of horror and slasher fans, but from the view of other people as well too. This one seems to be holding up strong. Again, I mentioned the critical ratings seem to be doing well for it. So I say people need to get out and actually watch this movie. Sick is definitely a recommendation from myself. I think everybody should check it out. I know this isn't going to be as long as our previous episodes of Killer Cuts by any means, for sure. As I mean, it'll change with time depending on if it's a franchise or a single movie. It's a little easier to go on longer about a franchise, but a single movie, hey, we're just trying to give it a review. I'm going to give it a high grade. I'm going to say right up there, A minus at least kind of thing for me. I recommend people check it out. I think that they shouldn't sleep on this movie anyway. But how about yourself? How would you recommend it, or choose your own style of ranking that you would give this one?
Yeah, I would definitely just give it at least an A because I feel like it was, like I said, it was. I like the concept of it. I like the twist of when I think about it from this aspect. Is there's the parents have to go through so much thinking of like first their son passes away, second plotting all this, and third having to. I'm thinking they have to go through social media to like in a way stalk these people and find about their lives, where they go to college, when they will be at, because even as Parker said at the beginning, like nobody really comes to this lake house. So I thought it was interesting where they knew where she was going to be at um, during the quarantine here. And even I think to be at least what it seemed that way, her friends will be, or at least her friend that got killed in there, I forgot his name. He was like the innocent bystander in that aspect because he, even though they kind of dated, I don't think he was really part of that party like that, of like giving the sickness to anybody else. So I like how more than anything he was defending them. He was always, well, he was there. Is like, I'll take on whoever this is and just keep going. And there's so many parts of it. I just I like how this turned out, and I like how in this one too. I feel like they fought so hard, but I feel like most people, like it seems like the slashes, they kind of give up in a way, and they die pretty quickly. That's what it feels like. And I like on this one, it's just we had so many scenes of like back and forth between the killers and the victims here. And it's like we had that part in the lake in itself, that when she goes to the neighbor, and even back at the house when they're doing the test to be sure that she's positive. And even her friend, when she broke, I think, her ankle, if I'm not mistaken, and she pretends to be dead so she can try to get help. So it's like they found their ways. They were like, I feel like in most horror movies, people kind of are dumb in a way, and you think about it, it's like
Mm-hmm.
you should be going this way, but you're going the other way. But I feel like these girls were smart. They were using the resources. Try to use the Wi-Fi, go to the lake house, go to the neighbor. Use your phone, use your car. So they try to find ways to escape this person. So I feel like they were really creative in that aspect. It's like we'll find ways, even climbing the house or something that reminded me of like Scream 4 with Sydney as well, climbing to Kirby's house and try to go around it to avoid the killer. So I enjoyed how much they had of like that chase between the killers and the victims here. Like that, we had a lot going on here, and it made me think it was like I liked it and I liked the twist too because when the lady came in the driveway, I kept thinking, is it her or is it not? And then it's like seeing her get desperate. It's like, open the door. I was like, shoot, I'm like, open the dang door already. Like even I was screaming for it. It's like, come on. Um, it just made me feel like I was in the moment there with her too. And I was like, dang it, hurry up already, lady. And like watching it the first time around, I would definitely give it like at least an 8 out of 10 because I just feel like I was entertained and I was like, rooting for these girls to survive and cheering for them
Mm-hmm.
all the way through, and just hoping like, come on now, maybe now would happen, and like hoping they would survive. At least both of the girls would, because at that point, the friend was killed, and just thinking back of like how they fought because they got to kill the first one. And I feel like even the parents, like the worst one was the mom, that she had to get, she was burnt alive to be able to for
Mm-hmm.
them to be able to survive this. So just thinking of all everything they had to go through in just a couple hours, because that was just like not even one day of quarantine that they go through. So I feel like they fought so hard that made me like stick through and cheer for them. So I definitely give it like an 8 at least.
Yeah, and I mean, and like you said, that just kind of brought it up to me that a lot of slasher or horror films have that bad tendency to make really, really cool villains, and then make you really despise some of the lead characters to the point where you're kind of rooting for them to have the absolute worst things possibly happen to them. Not the case in Sick. You'll actually be rooting for the victims here, the people that are trying to survive. You're not going to be rooting for the villains in this one at all. You're going to be happy when they get there. Just desserts by the end of this one. So obviously a great recommendation from the both of us. So here on Killer Cuts, this one not only gets a pass, it gets a big recommendation. Go check it out, whether that's on Peacock in the US or rental or whatever way you stream movies. Go check out the latest. Sick is A-okay with us. Astrid, let everybody know, where can they find you? What you got coming up in the not so distant future?
You can find me mostly on my Twitter, Astrid Pizarro, and my Instagram, Astrid Pizarro 20. Weekly basis. We mentioned this. I don't mention this often because we already have it in the channel. We do it sporadically, but scheduling wise, you can find me on Tuesdays doing Taking Over with Ed as we discuss NXT, and then Thursdays doing Making an Impact, mostly with Cody discussing Impact Wrestling. And some Fridays we do every 2 weeks. We do have Ladies Session Showcase, Melba and myself discussing Women's Wrestling and whatever's the latest going on. And sometimes we do have a little special episodes in there as well. If you do go my YouTube channel, you can find the past episodes of all of my shows there, and my series called Astrid Ask as well. But yeah, everything pretty much is going to be on my YouTube channel.
Wonderful. Yeah, everybody go and subscribe to Astrid's YouTube channel and check out all of her wonderful work, including the work that we had just drop on Wednesday of this week. That was our special Love Your Health mental health awareness stream that you were on with myself and Mel Ball Collins. That went really, really well. I've got Thursday Night with Papa Smokes that just aired just last night, as this is coming out on a Friday. Check out the replay of that or check out next week's episode. But also a very special guest that's going to be joining this Sunday on Busting Out with myself and Chris Parrish, a up-and-coming professional wrestler on the top 500 single wrestlers in the world, ranked by PWI. His name is Bougie, and he's going to be joining the Brunch Busters this Sunday. We also want to tell you to go on over to rogueenergy.com, where you can use that promo code OLEPODS for 10% off your order from our good friends at rogueenergy.com. And make sure to follow us here at our local establishment. You can check out all the things down below on that ticker, whether it be Twitch, YouTube, our email address, or any of the other socials that you can find us on. We got all sorts of great stuff going on. We got some shows that are even exclusive to the socials, some great clips and shorts for you guys. So follow along. We got a lot of great things going on here at OLE. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. Make sure to let us know in the comments what you thought of this movie and what you'd like to see on future episodes of Killer Cuts. For now, I've been Bobby Munson. That's Astrid Pizarro, and we'll see you when Chapter 4 comes out.